student has a lot of this, but not much of this, but we're only paying attention to this, have we reached that student? So what if we have a classroom where these are the teacher's strengths? But these are the student's strengths.
That's what they're not going to be able to learn, and then they're going to be able to develop their skills or their main skills, because those are the main skills of those students.
Right? If this student is very strong in these intelligences and relatively weak in these intelligences, but we're only measuring students by these intelligences, because that's what we think intelligence is, we'll probably send this kid off to technical school. Couldn't make it.
And it's going to be boring.
Yes?
That's what
Yes?
I say.
Yeah. So the question is, how do we reach that? And the answer is by changing the way we teach. By having students do different things in their learning. And Gardner's work doesn't tell us what to do. It only tells us the framework of how to think about it. But if you Google multiple intelligences, you will find tons of educators that have taken this challenge and figured out what to do with it. This is one way. Research shows that when the arts are integrated in core learning, that core learning goes up. So if you're trying to teach history, and you engage your students to maybe make a play about that, particularly in the early years, particularly for the little kids, and you have 8 students, each with a role, and they have to practice their lines, they're going to learn that better than if they weren't doing anything related to arts. This was, I helped develop arts elementary school a couple of years ago, integrated arts. And this was a quote from one of the teachers. And this was her classroom. We know that when students are engaged in critical thinking, in analysis, in demonstration of their analysis through spreadsheets and charts, etc., and when they're doing something that's really real, that their learning can skyrocket. So I worked in Sacramento, California last year, and I discovered this wonderful elementary school. It had 300 students in it, and it was in the poverty part of the city. But the teachers and the students started a garden. This is elementary school. They created a garden, and they grew vegetables and flowers, but mostly vegetables. And they used the garden for learning. So they were experimenting with fertilizer and different soil types. They experimented with sun and shade. They experimented with watering or not watering. And they measured and they monitored. And they made charts. And they ate a lot of vegetables. And the teachers took this gardening and they turned it into science. And then they overlaid math on it. And then they had students take journals, write journals about what they were doing, what the differences were. And the students started inventing things about what to do. So they analyzed how much rain fell on the rooftops of buildings. And they calculated how much water could be saved by harvesting all that rainwater. And then they got the school to buy big rain barrels. And so now everywhere there's a downspout, there's a big rain barrel with taps to then go water the vegetables. And in order to do this work, they created a science lab in the school that they didn't know they needed before. And so the test scores went way up. And this little school of 300 students now has 450 students because parents are choosing to send their kids here. And it's now the top performing school in math and science in the city. And this all comes because the students were doing engaged learning in a meaningful way. It's interdisciplinary. They could see the impact of their learning. And I suspect that they have something to talk about when they go home at night.
Mr. Lover,
Yes, sir.
did you find that in a common regular school or in a magnet school?
This is just a regular old elementary school, and it was slated to be closed. It was going
There
to
was a magnet dealing with science.
No, it's not a science magnet school.
No?
No, it's a school.
It's what it is, though. It's creating hands-on learning that's highly project-based, and any school could do it. I do have a magnet school. Oops, sorry. This is a different school. This is in Vermont, in northeast United States. And I helped bring this one online a couple years ago. But it's very similar. They focus on maple sugar, making maple sugar, because that's what they do locally. But all this is an example of changing the learning from teacher-directed to student-involved, and having the flexibility within the school to see how it can grow. And it's a good story. Other questions? Yes.
Eso es similar a los métodos naturales que utilizó Celestín Freinet en los años 30 en Francia. Este método es similar a los métodos naturales que utilizaba Celestín Freinet en Francia, que era a través de una granja en los años 30.
I don't know.
Eran los métodos naturales.
It probably could be. There may be examples of this in lots of different places. And I believe that, at least in our American culture, that the first examples of it go at least back 50 years. Here maybe so as well. Yes? Okay. So this is not new then. This could be something that could be activated. And in fact, we could probably do some historic research on how this ties in with learning in other places. So this is number 4. On your score sheets, on your worksheets. I'm going to pass over this one. No, I'll go back. So, there's a concept about how many people a person can really know. And I share this with you because one of the things we're trying to do in schools is develop strong relationships. Strong relationships between teachers and students. Strong relationships between teachers. Because, and between students and students. And also between schools and families. Because we know that the stronger those relationships, the more students learn. If you know your students personally, and you know where their learning strengths are and their learning weaknesses are, you can pay more attention to them, even if they're in a larger group. And if you can shift the way they're learning to be more effective, they will learn more. So part of relationships is school size. You have 800 students. You're subdivided into elementary, pre-secondary, 2 basic schools. So that's basically, what, 400 students in each? Pretty big group size. How many students can a principal know by name?
I think I know a lot.
Not quite 800. How many students can a teacher know really well? Is there an answer to that? No. It's going to vary. Yeah. But we tend to think of our schools by grade levels. And I think you do too. What if we thought of our schools by relationship levels? How do we form strong relationships? Maybe grade levels aren't so important anymore. Maybe the developmental span of learning is what's important. I throw that out as a rhetorical question. But it can impact planning the school. Here's an example of the good relationship building in a secondary school in the United States. And this is still unusual, but this is a good role model. So this school, which I worked with about 15 years ago, has what they call an advisor-advisee program. And this is a program where a teacher or adult, including the principal and the guidance counselor and others who are administrators, meet with 12 students every day. So half of the class size, 12 students every day. This is a school with what we call block scheduling, where they take their regular classes every other day. So if they have history, it's Monday, and then Wednesday, and then Friday. But for advisor-advisee, they do it every day for a half hour. They do lunch for a half hour, and then they do advisory advising for a half hour. And then the other half of the school does advisory advising and then lunch. So you have 2 servings for lunch. When students aren't at lunch, they might be doing advisory advising. And they have this curriculum. So for the 4 years of high school, we have a 12-year system. Our 4 years of high school. The first, and you wouldn't need it this way, but this is what they do because they're a new school for many students at 9th grade. The entire focus of that first year is what's it feel like to be in this new school. The second year they shift to setting up the portfolios that students need to graduate. Because in this school, in order to graduate, students need a record of their work that is more than just grades. They need examples of their artwork. They need examples of their writing. They need their journals and things like that. And how do you plan for that? And in the last year, they have a senior project, which is to do something that shows your learning, shows what your learning has been. A highly personal project defined by the students. So this school has become one of the most successful schools in their region. And the principal says it's because of this. Because this half-hour a day, which focuses on students, is one of the strongest bonding times between an adult and a student. Okay, I mentioned this before. Let me take it a little further. This may be the future of learning. Adaptive learning, with students working on computers that have learning programs in them that can measure a lot of attributes about the student, including things like how long did it take to answer questions? Were they able to piece together disparate pieces of information? What was the sequence in which they explored these problems? So here's a diagram of 2 different students with different paths of travel for how they explored issues. And what the program does is it figures out what level of learning they're at. And it raises the bar just a little bit. So their next pass has more challenge to it. In the same way that video games give feedback and raise the bar. And why do students like video games? Why do our children like video games? Challenge. Yeah. Instant gratification. They get their scores really quickly. They know whether they have succeeded. And what do we do at school? We say, we'll tell you in 3 weeks. Right? We'll take a test at the end of the year and we'll let you know how you're doing.
We're working with different, already we started working with evaluating our kids with online tests.
Yeah, okay. Yep. And that's a step.
.com.
No, don't know.
Yeah, where we're.
Okay, you got that, okay. So you've got your toe in the water on it.
That board, .com.
What if in 5 years, every subject area you teach had this technology available? And our students treat their learning with the same excitement that they treat video games. Your role would change. Because your role would be one of stimulating the dialogue among students and helping them manage the learning that they get through other sources. This is our future, or part of our future. One more thing. Do you use the terms here, flipped classroom or blended learning? Yes. This is a concept that initially started at the university level, and in the U.S. is now K-12. And what it basically is that instead of the teacher being the holder of the content, students get the content somewhere else. And they can get it through the internet in any number of programs you can sign up for. Or Khan Academy. Have you heard of Khan Academy? K-H-A-N Academy. It started about 5 years ago with a guy in California who was trying to teach his niece who lived in Georgia, and he created little 5-minute learning videos, and he put them on YouTube, and it went viral. And he's now got a whole school on the internet, K-H-A-N Academy. So students can learn content at night or after school. And when they come to school, you can lead them through discussions about what they learned instead of having to tell them stuff. And that means your time with them is more valuable. And it means instead of, on the learning pyramid, instead of lecturing, you've got students further down the pyramid doing discussions. Or they could be doing projects. And while this started in college, and research says this is more effective than teacher standard deliveries without the technology. In other words, it improves learning. The question, of course, is how young will this go? Can fifth graders do it this way? Can second graders learn on the internet, come in and do things differently in class? Can first graders do it? I don't know, but we will soon find out. So, in the US of A, we have this construct, Bloom's taxonomy, as the very basic measure of states of knowledge. You're shaking your head up and down. Do you have it here?
Yes.
And you have Bloom's taxonomy? Okay. And you know in 2008, they changed it. And this change of creating things is the highest level of knowledge correlates exactly with what we're seeing in other parts of life. 5 minutes okay? Yeah. How about 5, but you come back between 5 and 10? Because I know what'll happen if I say 10, you'll take. Good job.